This is Lisa Gonzalez. The title of my film is Twister from 1996. Twister takes place in Waukeeta, Oklahoma, and storm chasers trying to create a tornado response system. The main characters of the film, Bill Paxton plays storm chaser Bill Harding. Helen Hunt plays storm chaser Dr. Joe Harding. Jamie Gertz plays Bill's girlfriend, Dr. Melissa Reeves. Carrie Ewells plays rival storm chaser Dr. Jonas Miller. Bill Harding and his wife Jo, storm chasers, are on the brink of divorce, but must join together to create and deploy an advanced weather alert system, all the while putting themselves in the crosshairs of extremely violent tornadoes with Bill's new girlfriend, Melissa, in tow. They chased several storms across Oklahoma. The concept of the movie Twister was to try to develop the perfect data-gathering instrument that is designed to be released into the funnel of a tornado before the competing team gets a chance to do the same. Action dramatized view of research projects like Vortex and NOAA device in the movie is called Dorothy. Is copied from the real-life Toto. Toto was deployed several times during the 1980s by the NSSL, which is the National Severe Storms Laboratory. Interpersonal communications, the process of exchanging messages, usually between two people, to create and share meaning. In the beginning of the movie, Bill and Melissa show up at work for the storm chasers. They keep welcoming him back. Bill keeps telling them he's not back. He is trying to convince himself. He eventually joins them with the intent to just get divorce papers signed, but falls into the old routine with storm chasers. An example of mediated communication is the argument between Bill and Jonas, rivals trying to get data for tracking storms. They argue about Jonas stealing Bill's idea for Dorothy, or as Jonas calls it, Dot 2. They end up having others get in between the two to stop the argument. Assess listening. Level of listening. What they are eating. The scene where we're at is they are eating a meal, and they're talking about the Fujita scale for tornadoes. They were discussing the different levels of a tornado. F4 would relocate your home fairly easily, and F5, there was a pause, and then explained that that would be the finger of God, and that only one of them, Joe, has seen an F5. Melissa was starting to understand. Some of the internal barriers were that Melissa did not understand what Bill actually did prior to becoming a weatherman, and it was hard for her to believe he had done storm chasing. External barriers consist of her being a therapist and in a totally different mindset when talking to others, and that she came from a place that was not so intense. Both Bill and Joel are used to being on the go all the time and did not think a second about how someone from the outside would feel tagging along. Joe and Billy could possibly overcome their listening barriers by taking a moment to actually listen to each other and not jump to conclusions by half listening. They could do this when there is no storm activity. During their conversations, each would jump to an assumption prior to the other person finishing what they were saying. The counseling on listening skills, I would have counseled Bill on his listening skills to use the empathic listening, to be able to connect with another person and to put yourself in his or her shoes, or provide a supportive listening environment, and paying attention to the message by examining what the speaker says and how the speaker says it. The culture of the main characters consisted of chasing tornadoes, intense adventure, always on the go, not taking the time to relax before moving on to the next. The different cultures of storm chasers versus Melissa, someone who knows nothing about Billy's past or perceived him in another way. Melissa is a doctor and literally did not understand exactly what Billy meant when he said he was a storm chaser. She did not understand he was being literal. This bothered her, but she was asking questions at the meal and trying to get an understanding. Jo was always chasing tornadoes from a young age due to her father being sucked up in one when she was a little girl. Losing him in an F5 tornado, she went on to pursue a better way to alert people of an impending tornado sooner than the 3 minutes to give them time to get to safety. This was her life missions. 3 elements concerning culture. Melissa interacted with the storm chasers, learning about their background and gaining an understanding of how the storm chasers lived day by day during storm season, being interested in others. Billy has conflicts with Jonas, whom is his rival in storm chasing, and Billy considers him a thief because they used to work together. Billy assumes that he has stolen his design for the tornado tracking device. Nearly 3/4 of the world's culture can be described as collectivistic. They think and react differently based on their values. Melissa ends up saving face by giving Billy his freedom to stay with Jo and not go through with the divorce. She realizes that he still loves her. Melissa's way of saving face was to let him go and letting him know she is not upset and he was okay to leave. An example of verbal communication is a scene at the service station and diner, and the weather is brewing. Bill is analyzing the weather, picks up a handful of sand, and lets the wind take it. Dusty comes up. Bill's gut feeling is the storm or tornado is coming, and the color of the sky has a green hue. Dusty lets everyone know they are moving. Once they left the diner, Jo and Bill get into a conversation about Melissa. Jo says, does she work at the station, and that she's nice. Bill says, ha, like he thinks she is digging at him. This would be under connotation due to the emotions that are running high in this scene. Jo says, someone should warn her about your temper. This would be polarization, as she laughs it off, trying to deflect the feelings inside of her. The verbal communication was successful due to the reaction that was gained from the back-and-forth banter between Jo and Billy. An example of nonverbal is the scene of the twin twister when Jo, Melissa, and Billy chasing tornadoes, and they come up upon the twin twisters. Cows flying by, but determines it is the same cow. Then they are in the middle of the 2 twisters. The twisters start spinning them around in between them. All 3 of them were in awe, with their mouths open when it stopped and disappeared. The look on their faces when they are at the core of the twin sisters, mouth open in awe, watching the cow float through the sky 2 times, the same cow. Then they start to scream when the twisters spin them around and around. When the twister disappeared, they were speechless. Billy and Jo got out of the truck, excited and celebrating what they had just witnessed. Bill had his arm around her waist, then realized that Melissa was still in the truck, scared to death, and ran to comfort her. Hand gestures were used when Billy grabbed Jo as they exited the truck, and he picked her up and swung her around. Their body posture and movement was excitement, and they forgot Melissa was there while they rejoiced the experience. The message that was sent to Melissa was one of false feelings for her, but she did not notice this because she was so stunned at the event that had just taken place. When Billy returned to Melissa, Jo's facial expression was one of unbelief, and she ignored it and went to talk to Dusty. An example of both verbal and nonverbal is the scene at the drive-in with all the characters. Jo is at the snack bar getting coffees. She is thinking and then decides to sign the divorce papers, but did not give them to him. Billy joined her at the snack bar for coffee and proceeded to discuss the pack that they are trying to get up in the twister. Denotation shows a specific picture of the pack flying in the twister. The nonverbal of the scene is them looking into the sky after the TVs go to static and the wind picks up. The following is tone of voice. They are urgent and yelling to everyone it's coming and to get underground. The sirens go off. They see it coming. Jo has a mesmerized look on her face watching the storm. The crew ran to the garage, bunkered down in the oil change pit. They huddled together to protect each other. Melissa was screaming. Billy told her she would be okay. Melissa still screamed. A hubcap blew in and struck the crew member in the forehead, and Jo reached him to cover it. This shows hand gestures and facial expressions. Jo had a concerned look on her face when the crew emerged from the garage. Their facial expressions show concern about the damage around them. Then the twister was headed to Wakita, where Jo's Aunt Meg lives, and their actions turned to urgent to get going to reach Aunt Meg. Interpersonal relationships. The initial scene of the F5 tornado Jo saw when she was a child. And then the next scene, Bill and Melissa are traveling to meet Jo to get divorce papers signed. Melissa senses that Bill is nervous and states, "You're nervous about seeing her, aren't you?" Bill states, "Why do I look nervous?" and laughs it off and breathes a sigh. This is the start of a significant relationship, romantic relationship, when you open up and share your deepest thoughts, feelings, and ideas. You open yourself up to being profoundly hurt. Then when they arrive at where Jo is with her crew, Bill sees the crew and keeps telling them he is not back. Bill finds Jo and asks her for the divorce papers, and she is going on about her business, Bill is anxious and wants the papers. Jo asks Bill, "What is the hurry? You act like you're getting married." She gives him the papers, but there's a missing signature. Then Jo wants to read it. Bill is exasperated. Then the conversation turns to the fact that Melissa is with them and goes to meet Melissa. They get into an argument about his job as a weatherman. Jo expected Bill to come by himself. Autonomy, connection. Jo still wants a relationship with Bill, but is determined to let him go, and Melissa eventually realizes that Bill still loves Jo and lets him go. Conflict management. In the scene when Billy and Jonas are in conflict over the design of the pack, and that Jonas stole their idea, this is competing directly, and they get verbally aggressive. When Billy walks away, he was still in competition mode, and tells Jo he will give her one day whether she flies or not, meaning Dorothy. Jo is apologizing to Billy for not telling him in advance about Jonas. This could be compromising because she is trying to calm him down, placating him. Also, this could be somewhat on collaborating level, where she is trying to keep him engaged in storm chasing so they can work together for good. My references. My review. Communication can be good and bad, with and without conflict. Communication is about being open to listen to other people and try to be positive instead of negative. I enjoyed the movie Twister. I was always afraid of storms as I grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and was deathly afraid of tornadoes. Then after seeing this movie, my mindset changed. I don't mind storms anymore and take the precautions necessary to protect myself and property. This film is highly intense with lots of conflict and compromise to mending relationships and stop resisting the past. My evaluation of this project is that I had fun with this project. I learned a lot about different types of communication. I had fun with the PowerPoint and learned how to do the voiceover for this project. After I stopped being mad because the class I was expecting changed to this class, I really have a hard time with communication doing English, only because I don't like to do it. This class was pretty good. Thank you.